Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about Friday the 13th, Part 2. And this movie came out in 1981, and it's a sequel to Friday the 13th. What else do you need to know? And I saw this movie once before, and I'm just going to keep this quick with my experience when I first watched it. And I explained this when I was reviewing the first movie, and the first time I watched it was when I was a sophomore in high school, and it was like Halloween night, and my cat was laying in my lap, and on TV where it was playing the first three Friday the 13th movies, and I decided to watch all three of them, and I was like, okay, might as well just watch them because I got nothing better to do because a cat is just laying on my lap and I didn't want to get up. And watching all three of those movies, I was like, okay, that happened. This happened. It was a movie, I guess. And I never bothered coming back to it since. And the first one I've seen a few times before at this point. This is the second time I've seen the second movie. And rewatching it, I don't think it's that good, unfortunately. Do I think it's better than the first film? Yes, I do think it's better than the first movie by a few things that it does better, in my personal opinion, and it is better than the remake, which I've also reviewed on my channel. And so far, this is probably my favorite Friday the 13th movie, and this one was the most entertaining for me. And unlike the first movie, spoilers if you haven't seen the first movie, and don't worry, I'm not going to spoil this one too much. There probably will be a couple things that I'll mention, but I don't think you're going to get spoiled for it. And some of the things that I do feel were improved over the first movie was that I felt that there was more effort put into the visual presentation of this movie, because in the first film it kind of just felt like someone learning how to make a movie rather than just a professional who knew what they were doing. And it was kind of a murder mystery, whereas this one feels more like a straightforward slasher film. And it does feel like a worse version of a bunch of movies that I've seen before that came out before this movie. But on its own, there are a couple things that it does kind of well. And one thing is that it's much better shot, as I've said already, and there were some nice long takes in this movie. And in the opening scene, there was a take that went on for at least a minute and a half, I think. And it was kind of cool, and you can tell that they put effort into it. And there are plenty of shots in this movie that it's better presented as opposed to the first movie. Like, you can tell everything that's going on, because in the first movie you can understand what happened if you think about it, but if you're just watching the movie, it kind of feels like there's some information that is missing. Where in this movie, sure, that element happens, but that's done intentionally, so you don't see the full story, I guess, as to like how someone died. Like, it's an intentional choice that I think paid off, and that's what I like about it. And it has a perfect balance of showing you just enough, but not everything to the point where it ruins everything. And I would call that an improvement over the first movie. And also another thing that I like better is that not only is this movie 10 minutes shorter than the first movie, it feels like it flies by in comparison to the first film, where in the first film it dragged on for so long, and you just see cars just driving by, or a woman just walking in this town, and it takes forever for her to get from point A to point B. And in that film, I was just waiting and feeling kind of impatient. I was like, oh, come on, let's just get on with it. And it took so long, and I was laughing at the movie. And in this movie, there are parts where I'm laughing at it, but it does make it more entertaining, and I am more entertained while watching this movie, whereas the first movie I'm bored by it for the majority of it. And this one I'm entertained for about 70 to 80% of it. I'm not saying it was great by the end of the day, but I am saying that it was a much more entertaining film as opposed to the first one. And also, one last thing that I'll mention, and this is a tiny thing, but in this movie, Jason Voorhees is in this movie. In the first film, spoilers for the first movie, in the first movie, it was Jason's mom who did all the killing, and not Jason Voorhees himself. And he was like in it for like 10 seconds at most. and that's really pushing it. And in this movie, he is the main killer. And in this movie, he doesn't have the hockey mask that everyone knows. Instead he has like a white cloth that has like one eye hole. And I thought that looked kind of creepy, and it made him really mysterious. And I do feel as though that worked to this film's benefit when they don't show his face. And I remember back when I watched this movie on TV, there was like, before it cut back to the movie because there were commercials. It was a commercial channel, and right before we got back to the movie, it had like I think it was Kevin Smith who said this while I was watching some of these commercials, and like right before it cut back to the movie. And he was talking about the mask that Jason had in the second movie, and he was just talking like how that white cloth to me is scarier than the hockey mask, just the way it was presented in this movie. And I would agree. I do think that was a better mask in my personal opinion, but a lot of people seem to love the hockey mask, and over time that's what they ultimately decided to go with. And that is about all I have for positives. The rest of the movie has a lot of the same problems as the first movie. I don't care about any of these characters. They're just really disposable, and I don't care about any of the deaths. Like, they're funny sometimes, like unintentionally funny, and Jason in this movie, he gets the crap kicked out of him, and it's really fun and entertaining, and he's really clumsy, and it's funny, and it makes the movie more entertaining, but it doesn't work in terms of the movie trying to scare me, and I was never scared by anything in this movie, and I didn't feel as though I was fully satisfied by the end of it. And there is a point in this movie where I got pretty bored by it, and once the kills start happening, that's where I'm completely bored and I'm checked out emotionally, and it's just going through the checklist of a traditional like by the numbers slasher movie, and it just feels like another for the pile. There's nothing special about it. The music in the movie, same thing. I don't think it's anything that special. It's iconic, mostly because it's spammed to death, and it's also used in inappropriate moments where I should be feeling tension. And throughout the entire movie, it does feel like an imitation of Halloween. But this one in particular, I didn't think about this for the longest time, probably because I didn't remember it, and also I hadn't seen this specific movie for the longest time. But rewatching it, there are some similarities to The Shining, and it just does so many things so much worse than The Shining, and it just feels like I'm watching a movie that is trying to imitate The Shining, but completely misses what made it work so well. And it doesn't work for me. And no matter how hard it tried, it just never got to that point where I was scared. And it was really sad for me to watch a movie that was genuinely trying to be a good movie, but unfortunately it just didn't make it. And one last thing to mention, I think the first half is better than the second half, because in the first half there isn't really much horror going on at all, and it's just focusing on characters that I don't really care about, but it's moving along at an acceptable pace for me, which is why I can enjoy it. And there were some jokes in the first half that I thought were really funny, and I do like the kills in this movie. I think those are really entertaining and kind of funny in ways it's not trying to be funny, but the first half is mostly the stuff that I like, whereas the second half it kind of falls apart and just becomes a really stupid horror movie, and the last 10 minutes are really atrocious and I don't like it at all, and it just completely failed for me. And that's about all I have to say about Friday the 13th Part 2. It was an improvement over the first movie, but still not good in my eyes, and unfortunately I cannot recommend this movie as a good movie. If you want like a Friday the 13th movie to like start with, out of all of the ones that I've seen from memory, I would recommend this one over the original film. The original is really boring in my eyes, whereas this one, it's entertaining, but it doesn't have the substance that I'm looking for in a movie. And there isn't really much to take away from it. And also, one thing that I feel as though could have benefited this movie a lot, and it would probably make it a really good movie for me, would be that if it just didn't take itself seriously at all, and anything that was going on was like kind of a joke, and I would be able to laugh along with it, and like the kills would be really over the top, but that would add to the humor for me and I would be able to enjoy it. But this movie takes itself very seriously, and it just kills most of the enjoyment I could get from it. But this movie takes itself very seriously and just kills any potential that I could possibly get from this movie, and what we're left with is a really bland movie, unfortunately. And with all that being said, I'm going to give Friday the 13th Part 2 a 5 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos as always. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below what you thought of Friday the 13th Part 2, and my social media links, they will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see you when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for Scream, the new one from 2022, or 5 Cream, as some people like to call it. I haven't seen this yet, and I just got it as a blind buy to see how it was, so look forward to that. But until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.